Part 58. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 571. At this time, Elder Dugu turned his head and glanced at the waiter. When he saw the bright red palm prints on the waiter's face, his face instantly became ugly, and then he said coldly. Said. I only give you one chance. Apologize to her quickly. If she is not satisfied, what will happen to you then? I believe you can understand it yourself without me saying it. Elder Dugu's voice was unusually cold, and there was something undeniable between his brows, and the murderous aura in his body was so stern. At this time, Murongkong felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He turned his head and glanced at the waiter. Although he was unwilling to do so, he could only say a simple apology. But at this time, Elder Dugu seemed to feel that this was not enough. So at this time, Elder Dugu just snorted, "Oh, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Is it possible that you haven't eaten today? If you haven't eaten, you can come in and eat a little. I'll apologize after you finish. Can you have some strength?" At this moment, Chen Tianyi did not intend to let go of this little guy Murongkong so easily. Chen Tianyi walked up to the waiter and then took a look at him. At this time, the corner of Chen Tianyi's mouth also evoked a bit of a sneer, and then he shook his head. Dugu, I don't think this nephew has not eaten. Look at the palm prints on this girl's face, it should be it's clear. Elder Dugu looked at the palm print on the waiter's face and was furious at that time. Then he took a step forward and slapped Murongkong in the face without saying a word. Another slap in the face. You bastard, all the prestige Murongfu gained back then has been completely wiped out by you. Get out of here now. That guy has been spoiling you for a long time. Do you still know who you are now? Elder Dugu's voice got louder and louder. At this time, Murongkong just buried his head very low and did not dare to say anything more. His brows seemed to be knitted together. At this time, Murongkong could be regarded as being submissive. After being scolded for a while, Elder Dugu kicked Murongkong out without saying a word. After seeing this scene, Lin Yu couldn't help laughing, and he actually laughed out loud. When Dugu Qinghong saw this scene, she just glared at Lin Yu fiercely, but she laughed out loud the next second. When had Murongkong suffered such humiliation? Although he was unwilling to do so, he had no choice but to do anything about it. At this moment, he heard Murongkong speaking in a deep voice. This time it is indeed the junior's fault. Please forgive me, the two seniors. But looking at Murongkong's behavior, it didn't look like an apology at all. At this time, Elder Dugu was also furious, but Chen Tianyi knew Elder Dugu's temper very well. If Elder Dugu was allowed to continue like this, I'm afraid Murongkong would not be able to leave standing today. Chen Tianyi quickly stopped Elder Dugu, and then said in a low voice, Dugu, calm down, calm down. This guy is a junior after all. Although he is a bit unpopular, he still has to give his elders a save face, so don't make this matter too serious. At this time, after Elder Dugu heard what Chen Tianyi said, he couldn't help but snorted, and then took a deep breath. Oh, it's just for your sake, otherwise, I wouldn't be done with this guy. After Elder Dugu finished speaking, he just waved his sleeves, then turned around and walked back inside. At this time, Chen Tianyi saw the scene and just glanced coldly at Murongkong. We are doing this for your own good. Since the incident a few years ago, your temper has become worse. It's really outrageous, your Uncle Dugu, I'm doing this to encourage you, don't take this matter too seriously. After Chen Tianyi finished speaking, he turned around and left. At this time, Murongkong looked at Chen Tianyi's back, a dark murderous intent flashed in his eyes, and the murderous intent in his body became more and more obvious. Stand up. Lin Yu seemed to feel the murderous intent in Murongkong, and then turned his head and glanced at Murongkong. Murong Kong's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu. At this time, Lin Yu also felt a chill running down his spine, and then he shook his head and sighed quietly. Lin Yu didn't say much at this time, and then the others just turned around and left. Dugu Qinghong had always looked down upon this Murong Kong, so he turned around and left without even looking at this guy. At this time, Murong Kong's face was quite gloomy. At this moment, you could hear his fists clenching and clenching. He almost gritted his teeth and said word by word, "I swear, I must let him go. You pay the price, I say." After Murong Kong finished speaking, he walked away immediately. At this time, the few people behind him just turned around and left. After this little episode, Elder Dugu's interest was swept away. At this time, Elder Dugu just waved his hand casually, and then others said helplessly, "Alas, the good interest was ruined by this guy. I really don't understand what kind of thing the old man raised." Elder Dugu slapped the table heavily after he finished speaking. Chen Tianyi just waved his hand and smiled, "I also have a son in my old age, so don't take this matter too seriously." Elder Dugu also nodded gently, and then looked at Chen Tianyi. He whispered, "Tomorrow, I will ask this kid to pick the eggs of the alien beast. Don't hide it or feel sorry for it." Chen Tianyi may have drunk some wine, and then he patted Elder Dugu's shoulder gently, "Of course there is no problem with this, just ask your little apprentice to come tomorrow." Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Shengchang. Chapter 572. Although Lin Yu didn't want to owe others any favors, Lin Yu was still extremely interested in that god-level alien egg. And Lin Yu also knew very well that if that god-level alien egg was placed in the Chen family's warehouse, no one would be able to actually hatch it. As the saying goes, no one is innocent but the one who possesses the treasure is guilty. If someone really targets the Chen family, it will be a catastrophe and a disaster. So when Lin Yu thought of this, he was ready to get the god-level alien egg. Elder Dugu really had nothing to say to Lin Yu. Elder Dugu knew that Lin Yu had no place to live, so he brought Lin Yu to his house. Elder Dugu's courtyard has 3 entrances and 3 exits, and it looks very grand. The design here is quite similar to Suzhou Gardens, with the warmth of home and a majestic atmosphere. Lin Yu walked among them and felt a sense of relaxation and joy. As he breathed in the air, a look of intoxication flashed across his face, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became even brighter. Obvious. At this time, Elder Dugu couldn't help but laugh loudly after seeing Lin Yu like this. Elder Dugu glanced at Lin Yu, "Little guy, can you see some clues about my garden?" Lin Yu looked around, touched his chin, and then spoke in a deep voice. "Gathering the aura of heaven and earth, displaying the magnificence of treasure land, the people who live in this place are outstanding people. And if my prediction is correct, raising strange beasts in this place may improve the spiritual roots of this strange beast." Lin Yu just spoke softly and unhurriedly. After Elder Dugu heard what Lin Yu said, he couldn't help laughing, and then nodded with satisfaction. "Ha ha ha, yes, what you said is true. There are outstanding people, the magnificence of the treasure land, and the fortune of heaven and earth. The old man Murongfu also set his sights on this place at the beginning, but that old man is no match for me. He has no chance at all. You can't compete with me, and you won't fall into my hands in the end." Elder Dugu's laughter began to become more obvious and more unrestrained. After Lin Yu heard what Elder Dugu said, he nodded lightly, and then laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, Elder Dugu is still more powerful, Elder Dugu is still more powerful." At this time, Elder Dugu seemed to have remembered something, and turned his head to look at Lin Yu. At this time, Dugu Qinghong was following behind the two of them, and seemed a little bored. Elder Dugu turned his head and looked at Dugu Qinghong, and then waved his hand gently. "Qinghong, it's getting late now. If you're a girl, you'd better go back and take a rest." Elder Dugu just spoke softly and unhurriedly. Dugu Qinghong was too lazy to listen to the two of them talking here, and then he nodded lightly, and then retreated. After Dugu Qinghong left, Elder Dugu's expression suddenly became serious. His eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, and his expression twisted slightly. Boy, I know that you are definitely not what Qinghong said, and I also know that you must be pregnant with a strange beast now. I know that desert very well. Even if I went to that desert, I dare not say that I won't encounter any strange beasts, but when you came back, you didn't meet any strange beasts. Don't you think this is strange? Elder Dugu's eyes were fixed directly on Lin Yu, with a somewhat complicated meaning in his eyes, and his brows seemed to be knitted together. At this time, Lin Yu pondered for a moment, and then he spread his hands and smiled. Senior, I'm really not sure, what do you mean by this? Lin Yu's eyes were staring straight at Elder Dugu, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious. At this moment, his eyes actually started to dodge. Elder Dugu just shook his head. Although I don't know why you hide your strength, I can clearly feel that you have no ill intentions towards us, so I won't delve into this matter, but you'd better also take care of yourself. Elder Dugu's threat was quite obvious, but Lin Yu didn't seem to fall for it at this time. Teacher, I really haven't concealed my strength at all. Don't you want to think about it? How can I be much stronger than you at such an age? Even if I am the son of a noble family, the strange beast on my body shouldn't be more powerful than what you have. At this time, after Elder Dugu heard what Lin Yu said, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. Then he slowly walked towards Lin Yu and patted Lin Yu gently shoulder, and then said softly, "Little guy, I didn't expect that you really have a lot of skills, and you don't show any timidity at all. Not bad, not bad. In that case, I have nothing more to say. It's getting late, so you should rest quickly." After Elder Dugu finished speaking, he asked someone to take Lin Yu to his room, and then walked directly towards the front. After Elder Dugu left, Lin Yu finally breathed a sigh of relief, but he still didn't know what Elder Dugu was up to. Lin Yu half closed his eyes, pondered for a moment, and shook his head. No, what he said just now must have a purpose. He should not be simple, and he wants to cheat me. Lin Yu was thinking more and more absent-mindedly, and at this moment a voice woke him up. "Sir, your room is here." After hearing the man's voice, Lin Yu came back to his senses at that time, and then turned his head and looked at the man. He nodded gently and smiled, "Thank you, thank you." The man just waved his hand casually. "These are what I should do, you don't have to be polite. Do you have any other instructions? If not, I will go down first." The man was quite polite, and Lin Yu just smiled at this time. "You go down first." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 573. When Elder Dugu returned to his room, a person suddenly appeared in the room. The person was wearing light blue clothes and sat in front of the table. Chi is not angry but has a certain deterrent effect. After seeing that person, Elder Dugu's expression condensed slightly, and then he slowly walked towards that person. Elder Dugu walked in front of that person, with a few smiles on the corners of his mouth. Share a smile. "Old guy, I didn't expect you to actually come out. This really surprised me. I beat your grandson. Is it possible that the old man behind you also wants to wipe your grandson's butt with you?" Elder Dugu just said this in a cold and unhurried voice. His brows seemed to be knitted together, the sneer at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and his words were full of sarcasm. After Murongfu heard what Elder Dugu said, he was furious at the time, and then he crushed the teacup in his hand and just snorted coldly. "You old man, how old are you now? How old is that little guy? At your age now, if you go to compete with that little guy, aren't you afraid of others poking your spine? At this time, after Elder Dugu heard what Murongfu said, the smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and there was quite a bit of amusement between his eyebrows. I'm really not afraid of this. The answer given by Elder Dugu made Murongfu a little speechless, but he also understood the temper of this old guy, Elder Dugu. So at this time Murongfu just snorted coldly. Humph, you accept that guy as your disciple? But that guy doesn't have any spiritual power. Do you really want to accept such a loser as your disciple? I always feel that this thing seems not normal. It's not like something you can do. Murongfu's ability to change the subject was excellent. Elder Dugu certainly understood that the purpose of Murongfu's trip was probably not to seek justice for his grandson, but to test out what kind of identity this little guy was. At this time, Elder Dugu just shook his head and smiled after hearing what Murongfu said. Oh, it's not that you don't know. At such a long age, I must train my younger generations, and this little guy is quite attached to me, so it shouldn't be a problem for me to train this little guy. Elder Dugu just said this unhurriedly, the smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and his eyes were fixed on Murongfu. At this moment, Murongfu suddenly slapped the table, and then said in a cold voice, "Don't think that I don't know what kind of thoughts you have. Do you really want to take that? The little guy is your guide, use him to hatch the alien egg that is very likely to enter the realm of gods." Murongfu said in a cold voice, a strange color flashed through his eyes, and his expression became slightly condensed. At this time, Elder Dugu slowly sat down next to Murongfu. He gently picked up a teacup, and then took a sip of it. A refreshing fragrance rushed straight into the teacup. "Open your heart." At this time, Elder Dugu's face was filled with a look of intoxication. He nodded with satisfaction, and then he smiled loudly, "Yes, it is really good tea. In terms of taste, you old guy it's impossible to compare with me, but if it's compared to making tea, this old guy, are probably not just a little better than me." The smile on Elder Dugu's face became more and more obvious. His eyes were fixed on Murongfu, with a playful look between his eyebrows. At this time, Murongfu was filled with confusion, but after what Elder Dugu said, he had to change the subject again. "You old guy, you can't stand your temper at all. How can a person who can't stand his temper go and make tea calmly? In fact, the tea today is really a little short of heat, but you can't taste it." "I can't even taste it?" Murongfu's eyes were fixed on Elder Dugu, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious. When Elder Dugu heard this, after Murongfu said this, his expression became slightly condensed, and then he nodded lightly. "What you said is indeed true, so the two of us have been fighting for such a long time, and we have never decided a winner. In fact, isn't it a bit ridiculous to talk about it?" Murongfu's face darkened slightly, and then he waved his hands and shook his head. "Oh, we can't fight anymore, we can't fight anymore, the past is gone with the wind, the sun and the moon are wasted, everything is blowing with the wind, everything is gone with the wind. Now that the wind has passed, it's time for the two of us to shake hands and make peace." The reason why Murongfu said this was because he had already expected that behind this alien egg, there would definitely be an extremely terrifying and terrible figure. Although the alien egg is still in Chen Tianyi's hands, Chen Tianyi, that old guy, must have predicted the situation extremely accurately. This time, Elder Dugu wanted Lin Yu to go to Chen Tianyi to get an alien egg. Lin Yu would definitely not get the other alien eggs, but the newly discovered alien egg. The reason why they did this was nothing but to push Lin Yu out. In this way, their malicious intentions can be seen. The two smiled at each other, and the smiles at the corners of their mouths became more and more obvious. "We are all the same, all 1,000-year-old foxes, so no one needs to play Liao Zai here. Today I also found Lao Chen, and Lao Chen should understand what I mean. Now we only need that little fish to join the game, and then involve the big man behind this alien egg. Elder Dugu said slowly. At this time, Murongfu and Elder Dugu, although the two seemed calm on the surface, he must be turbulent behind the scenes, but all of this is naturally some later talk. Elder Dugu pondered for a moment, and then said in a cold voice, I still feel a little uneasy. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 574. At this time, after Murongfu heard what Elder Dugu said, the smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious. He just waved his hand gently, and then said softly, the reason why you feel this way is for no other reason than that you are too good at calculating. Elder Dugu glared at Murongfu fiercely, this matter actually needs your help. When the time comes, you must add fuel to the flames. Since it is a game, everything must be done perfectly, what do you think? Elder Dugu just said this in a cold and unhurried voice. After Murongfu heard what Elder Dugu said, he couldn't help laughing, and then others nodded heavily. Yes, now that we have decided to make a game, everything must be done perfectly. The little guy must not be able to notice it when the time comes, so I will still be the bad guy. The two people looked at each other and smiled, all in silence. After returning to the room, Lin Yu felt a little uneasy for some reason. He half closed his eyes, groped his chin, pondered for a moment, and then shook his head. No, this thing is a little strange, this thing is also a little fishy. Lin Yu just spoke in a low voice and murmured in a low voice. After hearing what Lin Yu said, Eternal Thunder Dragon also nodded gently. Yes, in fact, I feel that if his strength reaches the level of the old guy before, he should not know anything about the story of the alien egg. Since they can see the alien egg, Dan is expected to break through to the realm of gods, so he should know the story behind it. When Lin Yu heard what the Eternal Thunder Dragon said, his expression suddenly froze, and his expression instantly became so gloomy. At this time, he was speaking through gritted teeth. These bastards, at this time, still want to plot against me, they deserve to be damned, they deserve to be killed. At this time, Lin Yu was even a little hysterical. At this time, after hearing what Lin Yu said, the Eternal Thunder Dragon was as confused as a monk who was stunned. Eternal Thunder Dragon whispered like this, What? Did you think of something? Lin Yu took a deep breath, and then said softly, It's very simple. Even tomorrow, if I don't use you, I will definitely get the alien egg. Do you believe it or not? Eternal Thunder Dragon, after hearing what Lin Yu said, was slightly startled at first, and then laughed loudly. If someone else said this, I would definitely think that guy was joking, but if it's you who is like this, I still believe it. Lin Yu. Stop flattering me here, but is it possible that you still don't understand what's going on in this matter? Lin Yu said in a cold voice calmly, with a strange color flashing in his eyes, and his brows raised slightly. If Lin Yu hadn't said that, I'm afraid the Eternal Thunder Dragon Dao really didn't know what Lin Yu wanted to express. The Eternal Thunder Dragon has lived for such a long time, and naturally it doesn't have a mind like this. This ordinary person can match. I understand, they want to use you to hatch that alien beast egg. In that case, you will be the owner of that alien beast. I am afraid that if Gaia, the mother of the earth, comes looking for you, she will only look for you and kill her. They will kill you. If they can deal with Gaia, the mother of earth, then they will help you deal with Gaia, the mother of earth. If they can't, just throw you out. That's right, if they can deal with Gaia, the mother of the earth, after this thing is successful, when both Gaia and I are defeated, it will be the time for them to take action. It's really true. Good plan. But after Lin Yu figured this out, a sneer appeared on his lips, a trace of amusement flashed in his eyes, and then he spoke in a cold voice. They want to plot against me, but I'm afraid they're not qualified enough. I just want to see what kind of tricks these guys can pull off. I'm really interested. After Lin Yu finished speaking, he gently touched his chin. The smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and a trace of amusement flashed in his eyes. The Eternal Thunder Dragon, after hearing what Lin Yu said, knew that Rain must have a way to deal with them, so at this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon was also a little excited. Okay, we must teach them a lesson and let them know what it means to steal the chicken but lose the rice. After the two of them finished talking, it was already getting late, so Lin Yu just sat cross-legged and meditated. For Lin Yu's current state, he didn't need to rest at all. Early the next morning, someone knocked on Lin Yu's door early. At this time, Lin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, he was still in good shape. Lin Yu walked to the door of the room, and then opened the door gently. As expected, it was Elder Dugu standing at the door. Lin Yu just smiled at Elder Dugu. Elder Dugu, I wonder what's wrong with you. At this time, Elder Dugu also coughed lightly, and then whispered, did you forget what you have to do today? Lin Yu suddenly slapped his forehead, and then others laughed. Of course I didn't forget, of course I didn't forget, I'll go now, I'll go now. After Lin Yu packed up, he and Elder Dugu walked out. But when they arrived at the door of the room, a person came over and whispered a few words in Elder Dugu's ear. At this time, Elder Dugu's face suddenly turned cold, and his face was slightly ugly. Lin Yu saw Elder Dugu like this, so he smiled, and then whispered, if you have anything to do, you can go first, I can handle these, I can go by myself. At this time, Elder Dugu laughed after hearing what Lin Yu said, okay, but don't go alone, I'll ask Hong to go with you. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 575. In this way, Elder Dugu and Lin Yu arrived at the door of Dugu King Hong's room. At this time, Elder Dugu just knocked on the door, and then the door was opened. Dugu Qinghong looked sleepy, and then he glanced at Elder Dubu, and then said softly, Grandpa, what can I do for you? Elder Dugu told Dugu Qinghong everything about his plans. After Dugu Qinghong heard what Elder Dugu said, he nodded slightly, and then nodded in agreement with a smile on his face. Dugu Qinghong and Lin Yu were walking on the street like this, but after they walked for a while, a man suddenly appeared behind them, with a smile on his face. Staring at Dugu Qinghong with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Oh, isn't this the legendary Miss Dugu? I've heard that your grandfather seemed to despise a certain person and was embarrassed, so he didn't even ask you to bow down to him. Oh, what if I were that person? I will probably blame myself and die of shame. I really don't know what kind of courage that person still relies on to live in this world. A person suddenly appeared in front of Dugu Qinghong. When Dugu Qinghong saw that person, his fists clenched and a murderous look flashed in his eyes. Dugu Qinghong clenched his fists and said almost through gritted teeth, Murong Kong, if you want to seek death, then my aunt can help you. At this time, Dugu Qinghong suddenly stepped forward, and then came to Murong Kong's side. He waved his fist, and his eyes were fixed on Murong Kong's body. A gloomy murderous intention began to spread from her body. After Murong Kong heard what Dugu Qinghong said, he also took a few steps back. In the end, he stared at Dugu Qinghong with a smile on his face, and then he deliberately pretended a scared look. Oh, Miss Dugu's appearance really scares me. Could it be that the legendary Miss Dugu wants to hit me? How could Miss Dugu do such a thing? Murong Kong's eyes were staring straight at Dugu Qinghong, with a slight sneer on the corners of his mouth, and a hint of mockery in his eyes. At this time, Dugu Qinghong also took a deep breath, her fists clenched loudly, and the gloomy feeling on her body quietly came out. Murong Kong, I want to kill you. Dugu Qinghong could hardly bear it anymore. At this moment, Lin Yu gently patted Dugu Qinghong on the shoulder, and then turned his head towards her. Bien glanced at it, and then shook his head slightly. When Dugu Qinghong saw Lin Yu like this, she was furious for a while. Her eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Don't stop me. No matter what happens, I will be responsible for it. You don't have to worry about it affecting you. Dugu Qinghong almost said this through gritted teeth, a bit of gloom flashed in his eyes, and the gloomy murderous aura in his body also began to quietly spread out. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Dugu Qinghong said, 3 black lines appeared on his forehead, and he was speechless for a while. However, Lin Yu was also very smart at this time. He just walked over and whispered in Dugu Qinghong's ear. This guy seems to have come prepared this time. I'm afraid he did it on purpose and wanted to anger you, so that's why he said this. If you really do this, then you have really fallen into this trap. The guy's trap. Dugu Qinghong heard this. After Lin Yu said this, he turned his head and stared directly at Lin Yu. His face tightened slightly, and then he shook his head. It's impossible. Besides, even if this guy deliberately angers me, I can't bear this kind of thing anyway. I won't care about it today. I must teach this grandson a lesson. After Dugu Qinghong finished speaking, he took a step towards the tower in front. But at this moment, Lin Yu hugged Dugu Qinghong, and then he gently held Dugu Qinghong in his arms. Inside, Dugu Qinghong had never been hugged like this by a man in so many years, and a man's unique smell entered her nostrils so crazily. At this time, Dugu Qinghong was in Lin Yu's arms for an instant. Her body could not help but tremble slightly. At this time, after Murong Kong saw this scene, there was a bit of mockery in his eyes, and then he looked at Lin Yu up and down, and then shook his head. I said, Dugu Qinghong, your vision is too bad. Nowadays, cats and dogs can really catch your eye. This is really something I didn't expect. At this time, Dugu Qinghong heard it. After Murong Kong said this, he took a step forward, and then said in a cold voice, Asshole, what did you say? If you have the guts, you can give it to me. Say it again, let me see if I want to tear your mouth apart. At this time, Lin Yu waved his hand casually, and then shook his head slightly. Oh, Qinghong, do you smell a strange smell? At this time, Dugu Qinghong was completely stunned. His expression also condensed slightly, and then he blinked his 2 big watery eyes. Strange smell? What strange smell? Why didn't I smell it? At this time, the corners of Lin Yu's mouth suddenly evoked a few meaningful smiles, and then he said unhurriedly, a stinky stench fills the sky, a stinking fart that is indescribable, you can't even smell it. Have you been sick recently? At this moment, Murong Kong's face suddenly turned ugly, and his eyes were fixed on Lin Yu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 576. Boy, what are you talking about? I see that you are really impatient with life. Do you want to die? Murong Kong's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, and the murderous aura in his body suddenly burst out, and an icy aura swept towards Lin Yu. At this time, Lin Yu just felt a cold aura, and slowly crawled towards him. His expression was like this, and there was a slight sneer at the corner of his mouth. Interesting, it's really interesting. This smell is a bit familiar. At this time, Lin Yu was speaking calmly and coldly, with a hint of mockery in his eyes, and the look of contempt between his eyebrows, which made Murong Kong's anger even higher. To the extreme. Boy, if you kneel down and apologize to me today, we will let this matter go. If not, I will kill you this time. After Murong Kong finished speaking, he suddenly took a step forward, and the gloomy murderous aura in his body spread quietly. At this time, Lin Yu heard Murong Kong say this, and just gently, Du Guqinghong held him in his arms, and then waved his hand casually. I have no interest in dating someone who only knows how to do it. Those who mention the glory of their ancestors fight against each other. At this moment, Du Guqinghong had been trying her best to suppress her smile, but in the end she couldn't help it anymore and actually started to giggle and hide her face in laughter. Du Guqinghong glanced at Lin Yu, and then said with a smile on his face, "Interesting, you are really interesting. Now I can imagine that guy even without looking back. How ugly his face is." After Lin Yu heard what Du Guqinghong said, he turned his head and glanced at Du Guqinghong, and then the two of them walked forward. At this time, Murong Kong really couldn't help it anymore. They jumped up in the human world, and then immediately prepared to summon the fire beast. But at this time, the fire beast's voice even trembled slightly. "Master, this guy's strength is extraordinary. I hope the master will think twice before doing anything impulsive." At this time, after Murong Kong heard the voice of the fire beast, his face instantly turned ugly. "Fire, you are an epic beast, why would you say such depressing words?" Murong Kong's voice was a little cold. Although humans dominated the relationship between humans and alien beasts, those powerful alien beasts still had some say. At this moment, after hearing what Murong Kong said, the fire beast also had a slight sneer on its lips, and then coughed lightly. "Ahem, there is no other reason, but it's just because that little guy's strength is a bit scary. I don't know why, even though I just tried to see through that guy, I felt a kingly aura from that guy. And the power of thunder and lightning directly forced me back," the fire beast just said softly and unhurriedly. At this time, after Murong Kong heard what the fire beast said, there was a look of disbelief in the corners of his eyes and eyebrows. At this time, his brows seemed to be knitted together, and then he spoke in a low voice. "Are you telling the truth? Is that guy really as scary as you say? Are you sure you're not lying to me?" At this time, Murong Kong's voice was trembling slightly, and there was a look of disbelief between his eyebrows. At this time, the fire beast just let out a long sigh, and then shook his head slightly. "Oh, it's true, so be careful and avoid its sharp edges for the time being." The voice of the fire beast suddenly sounded in Murong Kong's ears. After waiting for a while, Murong Kong's expression suddenly tightened, and then he clenched his fists and said almost through gritted teeth, "But I still can't swallow that breath." At this time, when the fire beast heard what Murong Kong said, he just pondered for a moment, and then a slight sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Don't worry, you will always get it back. It's just a matter of time. And I'm not sure if that feeling is an illusion, but before I confirm this, it's better to be careful." Murong Kong's eyes were fixed on the backs of Lin Yu and Du Guqinghong. At this time, Du Guqinghong also noticed this matter. It seemed that something was wrong, but what exactly was wrong, even Du Guqinghong himself could not explain. "What's going on? This doesn't seem to fit that guy's character. That guy should be furious now and should catch up. But why hasn't that guy caught up yet?" Du Guqinghong's voice rang in Lin Yu's ears. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Du Guqinghong said, he couldn't help but cough lightly, then waved lightly, and then smiled. "Who knows, maybe that guy really feels fear, or maybe it's because that guy is really scared, but these are unknown." After Du Guqinghong heard what Lin Yu said, he turned his head and stared directly at Lin Yu. "Are you telling the truth? But why do I always feel like you are lying to me?" Du Guqinghong's eyes seemed to be able to penetrate everything. Her eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, her face was slightly condensed, and there was quite a bit of confusion in the corners of her eyes and eyebrows. At this moment, Lin Yu just coughed lightly, and then said in a low voice, "How could I lie to you? That guy's purpose from the beginning was probably to anger you and make you make the first move so that he can gain the upper hand, but in the end, you won't accept his tactics at all, So you probably don't have any temper at all. Zhuge Qinghong also felt that Lin Yu's explanation was a bit far-fetched, but it was still reasonable, so he nodded slightly. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Sheng Chang. Chapter 577. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong and Lin Yu came to Tianbeizai talking and laughing. This Tianbeizai is indeed somewhat impressive, and the plaque on which dragons and phoenixes are dancing contains an extremely powerful spiritual power. From just that plaque, you can tell that the contents must be of great value. Lin Yu's eyes could not help but flash a bit of strangeness. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong and Lin Yu stood up and walked slowly into Tianbeizai. After entering, there was a man wearing glasses who looked quite shrewd. The man was making plans, but when he saw Zhuge Qinghong coming, he also greeted him with a smile on his face. The man came to Zhuge Qinghong, and then smiled at Zhuge Qinghong. "Miss Zhuge, you are here. I wonder what you are going to see today? If you see something today, just take it away." That man seemed to dote on Zhuge Qinghong, and he looked like an elder. At this time, Zhuge Qinghong glanced at the man, and then showed a sweet smile. She said softly, "Hey, I knew you were the best to me, Grandpa Changsheng." The man gently rubbed Zhuge Qinghong's little head, with a rather doting look in his eyes. At this time, he just coughed lightly. "Ahem, you silly girl, you have the nerve to say that you know your Grandpa Changsheng is the best to you, so you won't come to your Grandpa Changsheng to have a look when you come back. I'm afraid I won't accompany this little guy here today to pick one. Alien beast egg, I'm afraid you still won't come over." Chen Changshen's eyes stared directly at Zhuge Qinghong, and then he spoke in a deep voice, but there was no hint of blame in that way. At this moment, Zhuge Qinghong just playfully stuck out her tongue towards Chen Changshen, and then spoke in a low voice. "You also said that I wanted to come to you and tell you when I left last time, but you were hosting the auction and didn't even come to see me." At this time, Chen Changsheng just smiled and didn't say much. After the two chatted for a while, Chen Changsheng turned his head and glanced at Lin Yu. "You're the one who came here to pick out an alien egg, right?" Chen Changsheng's eyes stared straight at Lin Yu. There was quite a bit of confusion in his eyes, and his face was slightly condensed. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Chen Changsheng said, he nodded slightly and smiled, "That's right, I came here to pick out an alien egg. I don't know if it's okay." After Chen Changsheng heard what Lin Yu said, he also laughed loudly, and then waved his hands casually, "What's not allowed? Come over and take a look and see if you like anything. If you have any exotic beast eggs, you can just take them back." Lin Yu glanced around at the alien egg of the red-trained yellow sand beast. Naturally, it could not be placed randomly in the lobby. Although there were many epic-level alien eggs in the lobby, the qualifications were still there. As far as Lin Yu is concerned, he is nothing more than rubbish among the rubbish. So at this time, Lin Yu naturally looked down upon these things. He just smiled and shook his head, and then glanced at Chen Changsheng. "Although these things are of good quality, I don't know why I can't resonate with these alien eggs. Maybe I still have no connection with them." At this time, after Chen Changsheng heard what Lin Yu said, he turned his head and glanced at Lin Yu, then nodded lightly and smiled, "Not bad. You little guy is very discerning. If that's the case, then I really have to take you to see some good things." Chen Changsheng just said this unhurriedly, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Chen Changsheng said, his expression was also slightly happy, and then he made a greeting gesture towards Chen Changsheng, "Thank you, thank you." The three people walked slowly inside. When they reached the end of the corridor, Chen Changsheng gently knocked on the side a few times, and then a wooden board slowly fell down, and finally a password box appeared. Lin Yu and Zhuge Qinghong turned around knowingly. Chen Changsheng nodded with satisfaction, and then began to enter the password carefully. After waiting for a while, the password was also entered, and then the door slowly opened, and then Lin Yu saw a row of extremely tall things appearing in front of him. At this time, when Lin Yu saw what was behind the door, he was shocked and dumbfounded. His eyes were full of surprise. Yes, even Lin Yu had treasured this huge amount, and I felt a sense of surprise. After seeing Lin Yu like this, Chen Changshen's face was filled with joy. At this moment, his face was even more complacent. Although Tianbao was nominally owned by Chen Tianyi, most of the good things in Tianbeizai were obtained by Chen Changshen in exchange. When Chen Changshen saw these things, he treated them like his own children, and naturally treasured them very much. Everyone wants others to agree with and praise themselves. So at this time, Chen Changshen was naturally delighted to see Lin Yu so surprised by his collection. Chen Changshen slowly walked in front of Lin Yu, and then pointed at these things. These things are all good things. Take a look and see if you like them. If you want to take them, just take them away. The surprise that Lin Yu showed at this time was all fake. Although he felt a little curious about these things, he didn't take them seriously at all. At this time, Lin Yu just smiled after hearing what Chen Changshen said, and then coughed lightly. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Shengchang. Chapter 578. A gentleman does not take away what others like. These things must have been collected by Grandpa Chen with great effort, so I still won't take them away. When Chen Changshen heard Lin Yu say this, he nodded with satisfaction, and then smiled like this. Ha ha ha, you are really good at what you do. The quality of the alien eggs here is also good, and they are all expected to be able to enter the realm of gods. Of course, that requires great opportunities, but even so, these alien eggs, if it were put outside, I'm afraid it would be worthless. Chen Changshen just spoke softly and leisurely, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and his eyes were fixed on Chen Changshen. At this time, Chen Changshen also coughed lightly. Ahem, what you said is indeed true. These alien eggs look very precious, but it seems that the resonance between me and these alien eggs is still a little bit worse. I didn't know you. After Chen Changshen heard what Lin Yu said, he couldn't help but half squinted his eyes. Then he turned his head and glanced towards Lin Yu. He coughed lightly. Ahem, little one, here are all my treasures. If you want something else, I'm afraid it has to be the strange beast egg from the divine mirror that day. That thing is usually unobtainable. Chen Changshen's eyes were fixed directly on Lin Yu, a bit of surprise flashed through his eyes, and his expression was slightly condensed. At this moment, after hearing what Chen Changshen said, Lin Yu coughed lightly, and then smiled like this. This method is always thought up by people, I believe you must have other ideas. Don't keep it secret, how about taking it out? Chen Changshen's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu. After pondering for a moment, he shook his head and smiled. You little guy, you don't seem to have squeezed me clean, don't you? Agreed. At this time, Lin Yu smiled like this at the side, and then scratched his head like this. I didn't say that, I didn't say that. Lin Yu said this quickly. At this time, Chen Changshen half closed his eyes. After pondering for a moment, he seemed to have made this huge decision. It is true that there is another alien beast egg, but this alien beast cannot be hatched by ordinary people, and that alien beast is also very precious, so if you can't hatch it on site, you can't take that alien egg away. Chen Changshen's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu, with a certain solemnity in his eyes, and his brows seemed to be knitted together. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Chen Changshen said, his expression suddenly became so happy, and then he glanced at Chen Changshen, as if he was interested in the alien egg. Extremely urgent. At this time, after Chen Changshen saw Lin Yu like this, he just felt that this little guy seemed a little different, but he couldn't explain what was different. Do you really want that alien egg? But I really hate those guys with high ambitions and low hands. You only have one chance. If you can't hatch that alien egg on the spot, then the aliens here will be dead. You can't take away any of the eggs, do you dare to bet? Chen Changsheng was indeed testing Lin Yu. If he were an ordinary person, I am afraid that after hearing what Chen Changsheng said, he would decisively choose one of these higher quality exotic beast bullets. But at this time, Lin Yu just turned his head and glanced at Chen Changsheng, and then coughed lightly. Ahem, I appreciate the kindness of Senior, but I want to try that alien egg, so I ask Senior. Lin Yu stared at Chen Changsheng with a smile on his face. At this time, Chen Changsheng also laughed loudly, and then nodded gently. Okay, I just like the courage of this little guy like you. In this case, you can come with me. After Chen Changsheng finished speaking, he walked inside. After Lin Yu heard what Chen Changsheng said, he followed Chen Changsheng and walked in slowly. At this time, Du Guqinghong wanted to follow, but was stopped by Chen Changsheng. That place is relatively confidential. Because I was afraid that too many robbers would be interested in the alien egg, I added security measures to that door. This door can only allow 2 people to enter. Only one person can enter through the thick door, so Xiaonazai, take a good look here. After Du Guqinghong heard what Chen Changsheng said, he couldn't help but snorted coldly. Then he turned his head away and whispered, "Oh, you don't want to show it to me. I don't want to see it yet. What's so great about this?" When Chen Changsheng saw Du Guqinghong like this, he couldn't help but cough lightly, and then he smiled like this. "Well, in order to express Grandpa Chen's apology, how about letting you choose from the things here?" After hearing what Chen Changsheng said, Du Guqinghong couldn't help but chuckle. He, I knew that Grandpa Chen was the best. In this case, let's make a deal. Don't regret it? After Chen Changsheng heard what Du Guqinghong said, he coughed lightly, and then nodded heavily. Ahem, I won't regret it. I definitely won't regret it. You silly girl, what kind of person do you think Grandpa is? Du Guqinghong chuckled, and then began to honestly choose things here. At this time, Lin Yu saw Chen Changsheng's loving face, and felt a little weird in his heart, but he couldn't even tell what was weird. Chen Changsheng turned his head and looked at Lin Yu, then immediately made a gesture of invitation, "Please go in and take a look." After hearing what Chen Changsheng said, Lin Yu also laughed out loud. If that's the case, then I'd rather obey than be respectful. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Ji Sheng Chong. Chapter 579. The steps to open this door are very complicated. First, you need to enter a password, followed by iris recognition, fingerprint recognition, and most importantly, spiritual power verification. There is only one person who can open this door, and that is Chen Changsheng. Or even when Chen Tian came, he couldn't even open the door. And the most important thing is that there is a key. If one of these protections is wrong, the door will be completely locked, and it will take about 3 days to unlock it. Chen Changsheng entered the password carefully, but Lin Yu memorized it honestly. After Chen Changsheng entered the password, he heard a ding-dong sound. Immediately afterwards, Chen Changsheng began to verify the iris, face, and fingerprint. After passing these 3 verifications, the spiritual power verification was followed. After the spiritual power verification was completed, Chen Changsheng took out something from his pocket. He picked up a key and then put it in gently. Then only a snapping sound was heard. Immediately afterwards, Chen Changsheng turned around and glanced at Lin Yu. He just smiled and said, "Little guy, come in now." This door opened slowly like this. Behind this door, Another door also required these tedious verifications. After these tedious verifications, they also slowly opened the safe like this. Chen Changsheng glanced at Lin Yu, and then smiled at Lin Yu. Okay, now you can go in. Lin Yu looked at this. All of them were protected by some special spiritual protection methods. On a high platform in the center was an alien egg. Chen Changsheng took out a key from his pocket, and then threw it directly to Lin Yu. I'm waiting for you outside. After you enter, the hatch will automatically close. If you feel that there is no way to hatch this alien egg, you only need to put the alien egg into the crystal again. Inside, I will open the door for you again. Chen Changsheng just spoke softly and unhurriedly. At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Chen Changsheng said, he also smiled softly, thank you. Then Lin Yu stepped in cautiously. Chen Changsheng's eyes were fixed on Lin Yu's back. For some reason, although Lin Yu went in at this time, Chen Changsheng outside seemed to even more nervous than Lin Yu. Lin Yu cautiously walked towards the crystal cover. There was a hole under the crystal cover where the key could be put. Lin Yu carefully put the key into the hole, and then heard a crisp sound. At this time, Lin Yu carefully took out the crystal cover. This alien egg looks ordinary. Although the patterns on it are very complicated, you can't feel any breath in it. This strange beast has a light yellow color overall, but it may be stained with the color of soil because it has been weathered for many years. If it were thrown into this land, I am afraid everyone would just regard this thing as a stone. However, the alien egg felt very heavy to carry, so Lin Yu carefully picked up the alien egg. At this time, Arya's voice suddenly sounded in Lin Yu's mind. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the alien egg of the red-trained yellow sand beast, unlocking the hidden mission, hatching the red-trained yellow sand beast, and rewarding you with 100 million points. At this time, after Lin Yu heard Arya's voice, his expression was suddenly overjoyed, and then he was about to start hatching the alien egg. At this time, the voice of the Eternal Thunder Dragon suddenly sounded in Lin Yu's mind. Before you prepare to take action, I advise you to think again. I always feel that this alien egg is a bit weird. What exactly is it? It's a bit weird. I can't explain it myself, but it's just a feeling. The voice of the Eternal Thunder Dragon sounded in Lin Yu's mind, but at this time, Lin Yu did not have as many worries as the Eternal Thunder Dragon. It doesn't matter. Now that we have got this thing, if we don't hatch it, it will be a waste of resources. It should be fine if we hatch it out. Lin Yu spoke softly like this, and one could tell from his appearance that Lin Yu was extremely excited at this time. After Eternal Thunder Dragon heard Lin Yu say this, 3 black lines appeared on his forehead, and he was speechless for a while. But if this guy is hatched, once Gaia, the mother of the earth, senses it, I bet that crazy woman will come to your door. I also guarantee that you will be annoyed to death by that crazy woman. After Lin Yu heard what Eternal Thunder Dragon said, his brows seemed to be knitted together. At this time, his expression also darkened slightly, and then he frowned. Are you telling the truth? But now that this thing has been taken out, as long as it can be hatched and subdued, it will definitely be a very powerful help. 3 black lines appeared on the forehead of Eternal Thunder Dragon, and he was speechless for a while, but at this time, he still reminded him carefully. I would like to remind you that eggs of alien beasts similar to those in the God realm actually need to be cultivated. After you just hatched this guy, I am afraid that this guy will not be able to surpass the epic realm at most, and if you want him to evolution is also an extremely troublesome thing. Lin Yu touched his chin, then pondered for a moment, and then said softly, but why did Gaia, the mother of the earth, deliberately get this alien egg? What if this alien egg is really as bad as you say? Lin Yu's voice was not loud, but there was also a suspicion in his words. He always felt that the Eternal Thunder Dragon seemed to have a somewhat unfriendly attitude towards this alien egg, and it seemed that it was also unfriendly. I have always been against hatching this alien egg. Eternal Thunder Dragon pondered for a moment, and then said leisurely, "Of course it's because I hate his mother and their hateful appearance." Survival of the Beasts, Awakening the Beast Taming System at the Beginning. Author, Sheng Chang. Chapter 580. Eternal Thunder Dragon replied coldly. Originally, Lin Yu thought there would be some special reason, and even the fire of gossip in his heart started to burn so brightly. But what Lin Yu never expected was that the Eternal Thunder Dragon would answer like this. After Lin Yu heard what Eternal Thunder Dragon said, he pondered for a moment, and then he laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, interesting, really interesting. I didn't expect your reason to be so fresh and refined. This is really something I didn't expect." 3 black lines appeared on the forehead of Eternal Thunder Dragon, and he was speechless for a while. "Forget it, what do you want? It's up to you. Anyway, I've already reminded you of everything I need to remind you." At this time, Eternal Thunder Dragon's tone was obviously a little unhappy. But at this time, Lin Yu just comforted Eternal Thunder Dragon. "Actually, there is no need for you to be like this. In fact, if I hatch this little guy, you can take advantage of his weakness and bully him, just to avenge the past, isn't it good?" When the Eternal Thunder Dragon heard Lin Yu say this, a look of disdain clearly flashed across his face, and then he became angry and rolled his eyes at Lin Yu, and then just like that, he said leisurely, "Look at what you said, do I look like that kind of person? Do I look like the kind of hateful guy who bullies good people casually?" After Lin Yu heard what the Eternal Thunder Dragon said, he pondered for a moment, then nodded slightly, and then continued to speak unhurriedly. "It doesn't look like it to me." At this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon raised his head like this, and then the smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more obvious, and then he coughed lightly. "Ahem, let me just say, you are still a kid, you have some sense. It's obviously okay." At this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon let out an angry roar, which seemed to be warning Lin Yu. At this time, Lin Yu clearly sneered at the angry roar and dismissed it. Okay, I won't joke with you anymore. Tell me, is there any way to hatch this little guy quickly? Things will change later. What if those guys regret it by then?" At this time, Lin Yu was talking unhurriedly. At this time, after Eternal Thunder Dragon heard what Lin Yu said, 3 black lines appeared on his forehead, and he was speechless for a while, and then he said so coldly. "If you want to, hatch this thing quickly. It's not impossible, but the process may be a little tortuous. I'm afraid." Eternal Thunder Dragon said softly. At this time, Lin Yu's expression also condensed slightly. After pondering for a moment, his tone suddenly turned cold. "Stop talking nonsense, what can you do? Come on, tell me." Eternal Thunder Dragon. "Actually, the way to achieve this is very simple. You just need to continuously input your spiritual power into this alien egg. However, I want to remind you that if you want to hatch this red sand beast, the amount of spiritual power you need to expend will be terrifying beyond your imagination." At this time, after Lin Yu heard what Eternal Thunder Dragon said, he pondered for a moment, and then asked in a low voice, "How much spiritual power is needed?" Eternal Thunder Dragon pondered for a moment, "I don't know much about this. If you are lucky, the spiritual power required may be less. If you are unlucky, the spiritual power required may be a bit scary." Lin Yu. "Believe it or not, if your spiritual power is not enough at the end, I will use your natural spiritual power to feed it in." Lin Yu said coldly. At this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon seemed to be able to feel Lin Yu's anger at this moment, so at this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon also coughed so lightly, and then spoke so softly. "Don't be excited, don't be excited. I'll think of a solution. In fact, it won't necessarily consume so much spiritual power," the Eternal Thunder Dragon said softly. At this time, Lin Yu was also so satisfied and nodded. What you do is the best, please make me satisfied, otherwise I will make you look good when the time comes. Lin Yu's voice was a little cold, and the Eternal Thunder Dragon was also on the verge of crying for a while. The Eternal Thunder Dragon muttered in a low voice, "Back then, I didn't feel as aggrieved under Zeus as I did under you. Alas, things are really different now." "What nonsense are you talking about? Why don't you think of a solution quickly? Otherwise, I will definitely make you look good." At this time, the Eternal Thunder Dragon quickly thought of countermeasures. After all, with the spiritual power that Lin Yu had condensed in his body, although it might be possible to hatch the red-trained yellow sand beast, it was still extremely risky. And if you exhaust all your spiritual power, if Gaia, the mother of the earth, is found back then, you may not even have room to resist. So now we must be cautious and cautious. Only in this way can we really avert danger. Eternal Thunder Dragon pondered for a moment, and then seemed to remember something. "I think about it, maybe there is a way. If I use that method, it might be feasible." After Lin Yu heard what the Eternal Thunder Dragon said, his expression was also slightly happy. "Hurry up and tell me what to do. Don't you have Arya? It would be great if you go to the mall to exchange for some spirit storage pills or spirit storage arrays or the like." Eternal Thunder Dragon said this unhurriedly, and then he also looked like this with a smile on his face. At this moment, after Lin Yu heard what the Eternal Thunder Dragon said, 3 black lines suddenly appeared on his forehead, and he was speechless for a while. At this time, his fists clenched and rattled, and then he said coldly, "Your method is really good. It seems as if you haven't said it yet." But at this time, Lin Yu seemed to be aware of this matter, and then he whispered softly from the side, "Arya, come out and do me a favor, how about it?"